I am here, jumping into Take 5. This is Advent 2022, Week 2, Day 1, and hopefully you watched all of Pastor Paul's Take 5s last week. If not, go back and watch all those. 5 minutes each. You can watch the whole thing in less than a half an hour, and then catch up here and start off with me. We are going through Isaiah 9:6. And here are the words if you need a reminder. For a child will be born for us, a son will be given to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So we're going to be looking at those 4 names of Christ that Isaiah lists right there. Last week, Pastor Paul focused the whole week on Wonderful Counselor. This week, we're going to spend 5 minutes each day discussing Mighty God. Now, whenever I hear this verse, my mind immediately goes to Handel's Messiah. I can't help but hearing that in the middle of the choir, proclaiming all the names of Jesus. Pastor Paul talked about Messiah, Handel's Messiah last week too. That's just where my mind goes. So anyway, if you know me, you know that I love science fiction, fantasy, superheroes, stuff like that. And if you're familiar with Marvel movies and you hear the word mighty, maybe you're like me and you thought of Thor.
Fortunately, I am mighty.
Okay, I know it sounds like I'm getting a little sidetracked, which I often do as well. The discussion of society's fascination with heroes turns out to be entirely relevant to our conversation over the next few days. You see, the word mighty God here in Isaiah in Hebrew is the word El Gibor. So El is Hebrew shorthand for Elohim, and it simply refers to God. Whenever you see the word El anywhere in the Bible, in the Old Testament, it's referring to God. We went through this great children's devotional book with our family last year, walks through 40 names of God. Many of these were beginning with the word El. El Shaddai, God Almighty. El Elyon, God Most High. Those are just a couple examples. Now, Gibor translates in Isaiah as mighty. And we see in most English translations, we see that, but in over half of its Old Testament uses, it's translated warrior. So when we read mighty, we can also think of valiant warriors, of heroes. Even when translated as mighty, many of the uses of the word refer to some of the great warriors and the heroes of the Old Testament. So here's some other examples of Gibor that we find other places in the Old Testament. So Deuteronomy 10:17 says, For the Lord your God is the God of gods and the Lord of lords, the great, mighty, and awe-inspiring God. Psalm 24:8 says, Who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord, mighty in battle. Nehemiah 9:32, So now our God, the great, the mighty, the awe-inspiring God who keeps his gracious covenant. I love that we have mighty and awe-inspiring together in a couple of different places in the Old Testament. So strong, victorious, valiant, awe-inspiring, hero, mighty. This message that Isaiah is writing in chapter 9, well, his whole book really, it came to a people who knew exile. It was a people who knew war. All the scriptures in the Old Testament were talking about this Messiah who would one day come and break the rule of foreign nations and become the greatest king they had ever seen. And they trusted that God would provide a person, a hero, if you will, to save them from their oppressors and lead them as God's chosen person, as David did. Only better. Part of the book of Isaiah is a condemnation on a people who have rejected God, which is why they were exiled in the first place. But also a reminder that God had not rejected them. He had a promise to radically change the world, but they needed to wait. Wait for a child. Not just any child, a child of prophecy, a strong, victorious, valiant warrior, the child would be called Mighty God. See you tomorrow.